I played a game recently called The Pale Beyond. I would not recommend this game. It is a good game with impactful choices and a different ending. Also there's a management aspect which in my opinion was too punishing and I never intend to play it without cheating. But it wasn't that bad. However, the sole reason I wouldn't recommend it is provided in the link below the video. Spoilers be damned, I do not want to see dogs die. And there is nothing the player can do about it. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. Except the developer who needs a kick in the balls for adding the scene in the first place. And I had the fucking space on the ship to keep them. Why did they have to die? Okay. So, right, the usual stick. What is it about? Expedition to the South Pole, funded by a mysterious benefactor. Motley crew, drunk captain who assigns a random nobody as a first mate, the player, and plenty of pain, suffering and death. All for measly pay. What did I enjoy? Were choices. Most of the game was about dialogue with individual characters. There the choices were very much min-max bonanza. Hated that. The player is forced to be a dormant min-max loyalty, to min-max loyalty. But there were actual choices instead. The ones I did enjoy. Like when to leave the ship, when to start moving, how long to hunt before hunkering down for the winter, and of course the branching path at the end. There were a lot of actual impactful, meaningful choices with very different results. Although I didn't try changing earlier ones that much, but I'll just say what the ending differs a lot. Characters I've enjoyed as well. Most are faceless goons without much character. There are some interactions, but overall they are very middling. However, there are some important characters like Kurt, Lady Cardell, Nutley, Temple Pop Top Crop, and others. They all have profound impact on the story and depending on the choices can end up in completely different situations. It truly feels like an adventure as a captain, and sometimes difficult choices have to be made, which kind of blurs my 2 points, but whatever. I like the people, and I liked their journey for the most part. These actually cover a fairly large part of the game. It's a game mostly about text, bars and numbers, which means that one can't exactly talk about how meaty the combat feels, how smooth the gameplay is, or much else. And the only other thing coming to mind are the art and music. I actually really enjoyed the character art. It's not overtly detailed, but it has a lot of character. It reminds me of Atlantis, the animated movie, especially Hammond. He feels like he's related to one of the guys in that crew. But the thing which I'd praise especially is the end. Look. Obviously people go through quite a bit of trouble on this expedition, and by the end there is a visible change to the characters. They all look much more ragged. I love that detail. It's definitely not necessary, but I very much enjoyed it. So the negatives, or what did I dislike? Music, however, sucked. I'll just put that simply. I don't know if there was some bug with the current version, but the music flat out didn't play for 90% of the game. Probably more than that. Only a handful of scenes and the music and the menu had any music. And when it did play, it was completely bland and forgettable, almost like it was licensed from somewhere else on the cheap. Which, well, who truly cares, right? But I felt like it was worth pointing out. Sir Bronte, a game similar to this, actually had a pretty enjoyable sound design, and sure, it wasn't a big deal, but it made everything more impactful and memorable. Even if it was just a few sound bites and background noises. It paints a fuller picture, like when you walk down the streets in the capital. Yeah, I can't actually remember the names of the cities. Or when you walk into a church and there's this kind of opening door sound and the chimes are playing. It just adds to the atmosphere, and here it's none of that. Aside from that, I'll point out that I frequently play StarCraft 2, Warframe, and a handful of other games. Pale Beyond had more RAM usage than those probably combined. I don't understand how a game like that chugs so many resources. It's essentially Persona 3 portable, and yet I also had FPS drops. Like, less than 10 FPS kind of drops. The game also takes quite a bit of time to load initially. After it's on, it goes by fast, but that initial load is, again, it's so damn long for a game like this. Anyway, I don't know what's going on under the hood, but it's definitely amateur. I dread to think what the resource usage would look like if the game was about something faster paced. There's also a problem of forced issues. Now, I already made it clear what I cheat. I just like to make my first playthrough one where I don't try to min-max everything and instead coast through. Yet, there were these times when the game had an event which made no sense. At one point the character leaves with supplies, and it's all dramatic. Meanwhile, here we sit with 99 bags of coal and 99 cans of food. I could literally just live in the Arctic for years. There were also conflicts between characters which again felt forced to add the drama. It was not believable to me. Hell, if I may be so bold, most of the problems in this game were about this drama added for the sake of drama. They didn't happen because this is what makes sense. They happened because the developer felt the player would get bored by that point. And I hated that. And if I'm perfectly honest, most of the game actually was boring. But I can understand why. The cheating took away a lot of the management aspect from me. But more often than not, I was just maxing everything and skip until the next week. And there was nothing wrong with keeping it boring if, God forbid, somehow the player is on top of their resource usage. Or like me, just cheating. Yet, here we go, another dramatic event, acting like that 20 food lost is a big deal. Also, just remembering this now, at one point I used a flare, and the crew reprimanded me for that. We'll need it for the rescue, blah blah blah. Didn't come up again. I didn't use flares once, except that event. And I'm trying to avoid spoiling any specific events here, so if you do play and expect these minus 20 food events to keep popping up, don't. I am exaggerating. That's not exactly what happens, but it's just an easy example to use what actually does happen. People shout at each other, people have a ton of conflict, talking like there's no resources, and I am just drowning in money, in food, coal, everything. They have too much, and they are acting like there's nothing. And so much drama comes from that. I wish it just tied to what is actually happening, instead of what is supposed to happen in the developer's mind. So overall, I honestly feel like this entire thing oozes lack of experience. There's talent here, genuine effort, and it's obvious that whoever worked on this wanted to make something to call their own. I mean, Expedition to the South Pole, how often does this appear in games? Don't raise all your hands at once. In the sea of games released daily nowadays, I'll definitely remember this one. If not for the good, then at least for the damn torture it put me through. Screw you, Bellular Studios, justice for the dogs. It honestly made me relive a very painful experience from my past, and I very much did not want to relive that again. So, screw you guys.